Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Inept General bringing you another Total War Warhammer 2 Legendary Lord lore video. And today we are bringing you the tale of Thorek Ironbrow. Thorek is the Master Runelord of Karak Azul under the rulership of King Cazador. He's built a reputation as the finest living runesmith in the Karazankor, or wider Dwarven Empire, as some of you may know it better. Some even go as far as to suggest that he stands with the ancient runesmiths of legend as one of the best runesmiths to have ever lived. As legendary as his runing skills may be, however, the dwarf is not without his eccentricities. A fiercely irate terror to his apprentices, his exacting standards have broken many would-be runesmiths before they are even qualified to do the job. One constant in his life, however, has been his assistant Craggy, who is usually of great help to the Master Runesmith, but still considered a novice in his eyes, as he's only been smithing runes for about a century or so. And can, in fairness, be prone to the odd gaffe still, at least as far as Thorek is concerned, and so he still keeps an eye on him as he works his craft. Thorek is also known as a staunch traditionalist, who can't abide new technology and speaks his mind on these new inventions such as the gyrocopter and other such new frivolities that have just made their way onto the scene. And obviously, by any human standard, they've been around for the better part, if not over a century, but Thorek still thoroughly disapproves and considers them untested. This admiration for tradition and things of the past extends to the relics of the old Dwarven Empire at its peak. He seeks to reclaim the lost cities of the dwarves, and failing that, at least open some of the vaults and reclaim some of the treasures therein. He's also doing this because he feels like a lot of the art of runesmithing has actually been lost as the Empire fell from its peak in its heyday, and so wants to relearn those skills to get them back into the Dwarven runesmithing craft. Because of his admirations for reclaiming a lot of what the Dwarven Empire has lost, he has found a staunch ally in High King Thorgrim, as he too shares the same ideals of trying to rebuild some of what has been lost to the dwarves over the centuries. And they both think they can be of help to each other in achieving this goal. One of Thorgrim's most recent and ambitious projects in this regard was his aid to Belegar Ironhammer in the retaking of the great dwarven hold of Karak 8 Peaks. High King Thorgrim put together an expedition with great effort and great expense, trying to give Belegar and his forces the chance to break back into the fortress after many failed attempts. To aid in this effort, he assigned Thorek, who had forged new rune-covered axes and hammers, as well as troops from Karak Azul, while Thorgrim gifted the soldiers many ancient weapons from his very own hoard in order to aid them in their quest. In the year 2473 of the Imperial calendar, 25 years before the start of the current Total War Warhammer timeline, an army marched out of Karak, the like of which hadn't been seen since the elder days of the dwarves, when entire battalions went to war wielding runic weapons and protected by rune-struck armor. Together, Belegar and Thorek's troops fought their way through the outer defenses of Karak 8 Peaks and managed to secure a position in the upper halls, a feat that had not been achieved since the halls had been lost. They did so just in time to secure the upper halls as a colossal force of goblins marched up from the depths. The foul goblins were led by none other than Skarsnik, whose forces outnumbered the dwarves many thousand to one. As the horde came into view, the booming thunder of the dwarf war engines rang out, carving swathes of gore and pulp in the greenskin lines. Those goblins that pushed onwards were met by a wall of steel that no foe could pass. In the ruined mansions of their forefathers, the dwarven warriors covered themselves in glory, holding like the ancients of old. Thorek, himself armed with his hammer-clad barack, fought at the forefront of the battle, striking repeatedly on his anvil of doom. each strike unleashing crackling lightning, causing a growing circle of death around himself to the enemies of the Dawi. After 3 days of ceaseless battle, the green-skinned dead numbered in the tens of thousands, and they eventually seemed to retreat. But in truth, this was only a portion of the forces Skarsnik had at his disposal, and this was merely a small test as far as he was concerned. But the dwarves had established a beachhead, something which had not been done in many centuries, and Belegar stayed to continue the fight for his old ancestral halls. Together, he and Thorek had succeeded where so many others had failed. In the darkness, however, little did they know at the time, there was yet another threat lurking, with the Skaven biding their time, waiting to see who would have come out on top in this initial conflict. Thorek left Karak 8 Peaks after a time, however, and continued his pursuit for lost runes and dwarven treasures, hoping to reclaim some of what had been lost, as he continues to travel the Warhammer world, seeking this lost knowledge. And that about sums it up for Thorek, ladies and gentlemen. In terms of his rules on the tabletop, we're going off sort of 8th edition stuff here, but he had a number of different rules. He was, of course, a sort of runesmith, master runesmith, so he has all those same rules with the Anvil of Doom. It does appear that he always has his guards with him when he does appear, and his trusty assistant Craggy. Craggy came with a fun rule where if you rolled a kind of spell or an enchantment on the rune on the Anvil of Doom, you could re-roll it if you had Craggy, but if you rolled a 1, the idea was that Craggy messed up or dropped something, and so that means that Thorek himself would take a hit, and Craggy would be taken off the table, idea sent away, and so you wouldn't get that re-roll anymore. So that was kind of a fun little additional thing. Thorek himself was, of course, unbreakable, had magic resistance, he had +1 for the Anvil of Doom bound spells. The idea being that Thorek is kind of the best there is at using the Anvil of Doom. Other runesmiths are maybe a bit too scared to use it to its full power. And I think in the early editions, it was even hinted that Thorek is the only one who can actually carve the rune for Doom on the anvils to actually make them for all the other rune masters. But I think that was taken out later on in the later editions of the game. That little bit of lore, but you can bear that in mind when you think about it. His hammer, which I mentioned earlier, is called Cladbrack, and it is a new rune he's trying out. What it does, it essentially sort of destroys any armor saves that you'd have had on the tabletop, and if the wound landed on the enemy and they had any magic weapons or armor or items, it would destroy those too. So very much an anti-magic item, if you like. He also has his rune armor, which is known to have turned away the club of a giant and left him unscathed, if not a little bit singed, when walking through Dragon's Breath itself. On the tabletop, what this did is it really just added a sort of +1 to his armor save, which was a pretty good one anyway. But that is about it for Thorek Ironbrow, ladies and gentlemen. A lovely little addition to have in the game, and yeah, always good to see him. So as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. Alright guys, bye.